Well, this is a different looking piece of water, eh? This is the River Wye at Urwood. It's fairly high up. Look at that. Marvellous, absolutely wonderful looking piece of water. And in here, we've got brown trout, shad, grayling, salmon run up it. And it's a day ticket water. I mean, looking at this scenery behind me, you'd expect you could be in Colorado. You're waiting for a grizzly bear to come out of the woods or a moose or something. But no, it's a day ticket fishery. And you can actually get a day ticket from the Wye Foundation. You can get all the details on their website, which is www.wyefoundation.org. Got to take advantage of something like this. It's very large. I mean, probably 60 yards wide here. Looks quite daunting to somebody who doesn't fish rivers a great deal. Thing to think about with this is that every little section of the river is in its own right a little fishing area. So we've got smooth glides like you'd have in a chalk stream. We've got ripply water that might run over a gravelly bottom in a chalk stream. So whilst it might look daunting, it's well worth coming up and trying your luck on it. It isn't as dangerous and overpowering as it looks. The tackle I'm using today is very much what I would use on a chalk stream. I've got an 8'3" rod for a 5-weight with a 5-weight floating line. Tapered leader, 7.5 foot. A couple of little changes though to what I might normally use. I haven't really seen many fish move. A few little splashy rises with bubbles in them. That would suggest it's grayling. But there could well be trout hanging underneath. Now I want to target whichever species is going to have a go. So what I've done, on the end of my tapered leader, I've put a seamless ring, a little tiny 2mm ring, so that I don't have to keep shortening my leader when I change my flies. I've then got a couple of feet of fluorocarbon and an Adams, just there. And I've tied onto the bend of that Adams another length of line, because I'm going to be fishing New Zealand style. So from that Adams, I'll go down 2 foot or so. That's my starting depth. Might go shorter if the fish are near the surface, or indeed go deeper with a heavier nymph if they're near the top. And what will happen, I will cast out the dry, the nymph will go ahead of it, the nymph will sink, I'm fishing the dry, and I'm keeping an eye on it for either a fish taking the dry itself, or if they take the nymph below, they'll pull that dry under. So I've got two options for catching. I'm going to move on down here, there's a lovely glide, and work my way up the edge of this deeper seam. Say grayling I think on the outside of it, maybe the odd trout in the middle. Yeah, I've got a tricky little downstream wind here, just turning the flies over awkwardly, but that's lovely. That's just right on the crease. I did have a little splashy rise at this fly just now. I'm watching the Adams. It's a clink hammer tied, so it's got a parachute hackle, which holds a fair bit of weight. Now, whilst the nymph I've got is quite small, it's only a size 16, because I don't want to risk it pulling the dry under. There. Got to get that pace just right as it comes down. I'm going to be a bit careful where I wade. I'm not familiar with this water. I've got my wading stick, so if I decide that I can't see the bottom clearly, then I'll simply use that. I did see, I say, some little splashy rises when I came down on the far side. So hopefully there's some grayling or trout there. Keep that line coming back towards me to stay in contact. Keeping an eye on the Adams all the time. No, and I missed it. Now, I'd like a bit of cloud cover, really. Now I might see a hatch. At the moment there's nothing really coming off. Just had a little rise behind me then. A little splashy one, I'm sure that was a grayling. As I'm working my way up this pool, I'm casting out sort of fanish. So I'm starting off near the bank and then searching out in towards the flow a bit more. Because the last thing I want to do is walk up on a fish that I haven't cast to cover. So inside to start off with, to see if there's anything close on the edge of the seam. And then the next cast will be slightly farther out, and then slightly farther, and slightly farther, then I'll move up again. Oh, got one. I've connected to something now. He's come straight down below. He's taken the nymph. What is it? Can't really see it at the moment. Oh. Yes, it's a little brown. This will be my first Wye brown if I can get him in. Come on. He's got his mouth open, acting like a bucket in the water. So I just pull my net off and get that ready for him. Get it wet. Oh, he just didn't like the look of that net, did he? Doesn't like the colour blue. And net down below him so he can fall back into it. And there we are. There it is. Numero uno. My first Wye brown. And why not? Look at that. Let's just pop this down here. Take this little beauty out. Oh, come on, darling. Steady on, steady on, steady on. There it is. What perfect condition. Look at that. Buttery underneath. Beautiful red spots. Perfect tail. This fish has never been caught before. Guaranteed. Absolutely guaranteed. Well, come on then, if you want to go back to get bigger, you have to bear with me. There. Time to let him go back. Turn him upstream so he recovers. There. And away it goes. Just sat there at my feet for now. Thank you, my friend. Borada, as the Welsh would say. Cracking, absolutely cracking. Probably about 8 ounces, that one. And there are bigger ones in here. I know there are. Oh, it's gone, shot off. Look, that go. Time to go and get Grandad. Oh, bonus. One little brown now. It's raised my confidence level even more, particularly as on my last cast I saw the trout come up to have a look at the fly, but it was very close when it came up and it spotted me and just turned away. I couldn't strike in time with a slack line. But yeah, that's coming down a beauty now. It came up from quite some depth of fish that I saw move, so what I may do is lengthen the amount of line to my nymph so that I'm getting down a bit more. It's quite bright. I would expect the fish to be thinking, well, you know, I mean, they don't wear Ray-Bans, so looking up at the sun all day, not something they like to do. Yeah, it's difficult keeping an eye on the fly when you've got scummy water coming down the bubbles. Beautiful little rise to the dry there. It's a tidy fish. I don't know what it is yet, again, because say the colour in the water, I can't actually see it. But it's got its head down. I think it's another brown. Oh yes. Came up out of nowhere. I haven't seen a fish rise. And then up he comes. Oh yes. Let's get this line on here out of the way. Before I tread on it or something. Oh. Another beautiful little Wye brown. There we go. The head out. Just in the top lip there. Oh, lovely. Going to trip over my wading staff. Your lifesaver, not what's caused you to trip in. There. A lot of people are concerned when fishing this New Zealand style that the fact that you've got another line coming off the hook will prevent a good strike. Not the case. Not the case at all. There we go. Put that out. Oh, it's well hooked. Come on. Well hooked on the top. Turn them upside down. Calm down, calm down. Mad Welsh fish. There. Another little beauty. That should be a painting, shouldn't it? Such perfect camouflage. You don't realise it until you see it like that. Let's pop him back in. I'm here with Dr. Stephen Marsh Smith, who is the director of the Wye and Usk Foundation and chairman of the Angling Trust.
Hi there.
How do you do? Nice to see you. Tell me a little bit about the Wye and Usk Foundation.
Well, it started about 15 years ago, and when we, as owners, found that the fishing was deteriorating, the salmon numbers were dropping dramatically, but also the ordinary brown trout numbers had dropped too. And we interpreted this as a problem within the river rather than within the sea. At the time, the Welsh Water, who used to run the river, then the NRA, and then finally the Environment Agency, spending a lot of time reorganising and perhaps not doing quite as much on the river as we'd ideally like to see. So we set up this organisation to do the things that we believe make a difference to fish and fishing. I would say the principal problem was that most of the spawning tributaries were blocked off, some by dams built by water engineers, some by rubbish, some by people who just built things to take water. That probably accounted for 50% of the entire spawning area of the Wye. But on top of that, the very uppermost tributaries, they suffer from the effects of acid rain. And it's quite bizarre. You look in this river and there's a little cloud in it. There's always something living there. If you go up there, you can see 30 feet. It looks like gin or vodka. You pick up a stone, it's not slimy, it's rough. And you look under any stone, you simply won't find anything there.
So how does the foundation raise its funds to do this work?
Well, we're very well supported by our owners and fishermen. We have various schemes that people can give us money. Right. And with that sort of core funding, we put together European projects. And with that, we're supported by the Environment Agency, CCW in Wales, who then increase the amount. And of course, it ends up quite a substantial project. Mm-hmm. Typically, a 3-year project, we've done about 10 or 15 now, would total about $1.25 million.
Really, as much as that? Mm. I've noticed now then, years ago, I saw the Wye and Usk passport.
Yes. Now that was our scheme to get people back to the river. When we started, and of course for this European money, we have to actually deliver a lot of rural benefit, fill the pubs up again, fill the accommodation, and get people coming. So we rang round all the old fishing hotels and asked, could we go fishing? And I think only one was able to give us any information on fishing at all. And that was one we knew because one of our trustees ran it. So, the whole infrastructure and visitor sort of thing had gone on the Wye. So we set up this passport scheme. And the first aim of that was to get wild brown trout fishing in the small tributaries, the things that are about 2-3 meters wide. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to make it easy for people. So they simply buy a book of vouchers, they have a guidebook, and they can choose where and when they want to go. And it's a kind of honesty box thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm very pleased to say it works extremely well.
I would have always thought the Wye was right out of my reach. Private stretches, get off of my land, etc. But it's not like that now.
It isn't like that. And the funny thing was, it never was for the owners either. They wanted to have visitors, but they just didn't know how to do it. We've put the two together.
Mm. So what other forms does the restoration work take?
Well, principally it's all work done in the small tributaries. The things 2, 3, 4 meters wide. Now what's happened over the years is the amount of sheep and cows grazing, particularly in this part of Wales, has doubled twice. So in that county on that side of the river, Radnorshire, there were just over 4 million sheep. There's only 27 million people, incidentally. But of course the county has stayed very roughly the same size. So every bit has been grazed off, including the critical bankside vegetation. And what we've done, or what we're still trying to do, because this is a lifetime's work, is to fence out the stream so that you get this natural vegetation recovery, and with it the streams narrow back to their original width, because badly grazed ones, they're wide, they're shallow, they get too hot, they don't have any fish in them, they get full of silt. If you leave them alone and keep the animals off, they narrow and they quickly fill up with fish again.
This morning while I've been fishing, I've been catching a few salmon parr. Now that's obviously a very good sign for this river. Are you finding the salmon numbers increasing again now?
We are, and they reached absolutely rock bottom in 2002 after more or less 40 years of continuous decline. It started to pick up. I have to say we're having a slightly slower year this year in 2009, but by and large the numbers are picking up, and the salmon are now filling the places that the fish passers have allowed them to go to and so on.
This is my first time on this venue. It's a lovely looking stretch of river. You live here.
Yeah.
Your house is just out the road, overlooking the river.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're a salmon fisherman, but I'm sure you've given me some advice on what flies, etc. to use today.
Well, I'd be using a nymph, because although there's just the odd one rising, I've seen one down there and I've seen one up there, we're not in the middle of a full rise as we were the other day when you weren't here, of course.
Always the way.
Yeah, we actually had big mayfly coming off here and they didn't miss one. So, but now they've had a good fill of flies, and they're a little bit harder to catch, but not for you, Mike.
No.
A nymph should do it. Somebody caught a salmon on a gold head yesterday.
Really?
Just on the pool below us, yeah. A beginner too. It's always the way. A proper salmon fisherman fishing properly is across and down, and a beginner goes in and casts at a rising trout and got a bit of a shock. It was 9.5 pounds.
Well, I think I might struggle to get that in on a 5-weight rod in £3 ticket.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll have to step up just in case.
Mm.
Well, I'll get on with it then. I'll catch some fish. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a marvellous day. Thank you very
have a
much
nice
indeed
day,
for your
Mark.
time.
Pleasure. Bye now.
I've changed my fly. I've got rid of the little clink hammer dry. I couldn't see it anyway. So I've gone over now to a gold head hare's ear. So it's just pure nymphing. Still going to be casting upstream for the time being, and just keeping an eye on the end of that leader. Still put a little snake in the line so that it comes back at a nice pace and gets a chance for the fly to sink to the depth that I hope the fish are at. I'm just watching the end of that line. Allow it to come right past. This type of water would probably be very good for check nymphing as well. Certainly during the winter months, providing there's not too much rain. Check nymphing down through a flow like that. And I'm sure there's some much bigger grayling than that around to be had. There. That did it. Not a big fish, but a fish nonetheless. You just see the line just move off just before I hit the fish. That, there. And a nice grayling at that. And still very lively. Come on, my darling. Come on up. There are, you see, so a change of tactic and an instant result. All right, not the trout we're looking for, but we're fly fishing. And there she is. Whoa, there she goes. Ah well, at least I got it landed, so it counts. It's a pity, that's one of the better graylings that I've had recently. Graylings don't tend to be normally on their own. I could well find some more out there. The beauty of a river like this is that it keeps you busy. You know, when you meet people and they say, oh, you go fishing? Isn't that boring? You just sat there all day. They don't know what they're talking about, do they? I mean, look at this. Every few moments having to recast, moving around against the flow, keeping an eye on the water. This is, yeah, it's restful in a very tiring way. I mean, the concentration levels required, the reaction speeds. You're always on the go. You're always thinking, why aren't I catching? If I'm not catching, what can I do to improve my chances? You know, do I change my fly? Do I change the method that I'm using? Do I do both? I said earlier on, check nymphing could well work here. But to do that now, I'd have to go back to the car and change the rod. This one's far too short. Change my line. So I'm happy to keep on with this for now. I mean, there's still trout out there, I'm sure. Just finding them. The River Wye. What a beautiful stretch of river. And now, as we heard, open to anybody who's prepared to buy a passport. It isn't a passport to get into Wales, it's a passport for the Wye and Usk Foundation waters. You can get your passport, you can book it online from www.wyeanduskfoundation.org. That will give you access to many, many waters, not just this. This is the Gremain beat on the Wye, where, as you saw, I've had brown trout on the dry, on nymphs. There are salmon available, shad, although we're not supposed to fish for them. I had a nice grayling down at the bottom there. I've worked my way up the river, had a few taps, you know, lost a couple as well, unfortunately. Maybe I need a bit more practice on a venue like this. The sun is about to go down behind the trees. There's a few sedges around, strangely enough, so there may be an evening rise. So I'm just going to carry on fishing for 3/4 of an hour or so.